In this one, we'll be breaking down this coffee shop that we've created in another video, and we'll be using React routing to break it down into other components and other pages such as the process, the about, and the contact section, while the navbar and the footer being in a layout view, which means they will always be present in each of our page. We'll also be creating custom error pages, and we'll be having a look at slugs as well, just a little bit. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so here we are. I have my development server running. I'll just hide this tab for now. This is the basic coffee shop we worked on. And I just wanted to state that if you are stuck at any point in this video, feel free to contact us, comment down below what you are stuck with. And also there is a documentation to the React router that we'll be using. And here you will simply click I'm new. And this will lead you through step by step how the React router works, what may be your problem. And also if you have any other problems, comment it down below for us. Now to get started with routing, I'll open up a new terminal here. And I'll say npm install React router DOM. This will get us our basic packages for the React router. And with that done, I'll just hide this window. And if you just look at the documentation, it's leading us to our main.jsx in our folder. So I'll open up main.jsx here. And what it's telling us is that we need to create a router which will define our routes. And we have to embed instead of the app a router provider, which will handle the routing and it will re-render the components as needed and as defined in our router. So up here, I'll just import create browser router from React router DOM and also router provider from React router DOM. Now we have to use this to create our router. And for that, I'll say const router, and this will be equal to the create browser router parentheses, and then it will receive an array of routes. Each route is going to be an object. There are different properties that you can set. So let's start with the basic one. There will be something called a path. This is very simple. This is at which path do you want to access the certain component or page that you'd like to load in. The second argument that we'll set is the element, and the element will say which component would you like to load. For now, I'll simply say app because that's the base component that we have. And now for this to take effect, I'll delete the app from here. And instead of the app, I'll say router provider. This is what we've imported up here. And the router provider won't know what to do unless we provide it a router. So for the router, I'll provide it the basic router that we've created over here. Now if we have a look at our app, everything is the same. And that's exactly what should be going on, because all we did is change the basic routing to the React router DOM's routing, and we are displaying the app here. But that's not really our goal, right? We'd like to create a multi-page application. And for that I'll come to our folder structure, and inside the source folder, I create a new folder called routes. Inside that, I create something called root.jsx. We'll be using root.jsx to provide our basic layout, because there are two elements that we'd like to have on every page, which is the navbar and the footer. We want to have this available on all pages without copy-pasting the code all over the place. So I call refc here, just like we would at a normal component, and then instead of returning a div, I return a fragment, and inside this fragment, the order here matters. Will be displaying the navbar, and I have to import this, so import navbar from the components, and I also import the footer from here, and I just also display the footer here. This will wrap all of our components. If we come back to our main.jsx, and then instead of app, we display the root, and this root also needs to be imported. Then what we see now is that our navbar and our footer are rendered, but nothing else, absolutely nothing else is presented. But I'd also like for our app to be displayed. So for that, we come back to our root.jsx component, and I have to import something from the React router DOM called outlet. This outlet will serve as a holder component. This will tell React that something needs to be rendered instead of the outlet, and that something is going to be the children of our root element. So as you might have guessed, there is a children property for the roots, and this children property is going to take in an array, just like our create browser router would, and then it will hold an array of roots. So for this, if I'd like to render our app, I'll say path. I will put a slash here because I want this component to render along with our basic root. So if we are on the home page, I want this to appear. And then I simply say element. And then now I'll render our app. And our app render just as we would. But wait, because we have two navbars available now. That's not quite what we want, right? So I'll come to our app.jsx and delete the navbar and also delete the footer. Now our app.jsx is back at its starting state again, but instead we have a fully set up layout for our React router. Now I'd like to show you how to add new roots to your page, which is the purpose of this video. I just simply add here a new root object, and I'll say path, and instead of putting slash here, I will put slash process. This will render our process component. And as for the element, I simply render the process component. Now if up here in the URL I type slash process, actually it throws us an error because I forgot to put in the parameters for this one. So I have to copy this card data from our app so we can pass some data into this component. And I'll just simply say card data equal to the card data. As for an extra, I'll also have to import the images. So above our card data, I'll copy paste these and our process is then displayed. No other component than our process is displayed, except that it's a children of our root. That means the navbar and the footer will also be there. Now let's display our about page. I just add the new root here. Path will be slash about. I simply come to our app, copy the about component, and then pass it in. Of course, I also need to import it. Now that our component is imported, if I switch to slash about, our about section is right here. Of course, it's not made to be fit in the whole area, but the purpose of routing comes through with this example. So now that you get the theme, I'll add the context here as well, path slash contact, and then the element will be the context section. With these changes being applied, I'd also like to make our navbar functional, because right now it just won't load in anything. And React Router has its own way of routing our components without actually refreshing the site. For this, I'll open up our navbar.jsx. And to enable routing with React Router, instead of displaying anchor elements, we have to display link elements. I select this tag from here, and with Ctrl D on Windows, I can select multiple of them. And instead of saying a element, I will say link element. The IDE helped me out and imported this on the top from React Router DOM. And without clicking away, I will press the end, delete this back, write link here as well, and then close it. And in React Router, instead of using href to route, there is something called to. To will say, where do you want to go? If I leave this empty, this will always lead back to our home page. If I say about here we do not have to use a slash, then it will lead us to the about page. But actually this is coming here. Here I'll say process, and then as for the last one, I'll input contact. And with that, our routing should be working, so let's try it out. If I come to the home page, our app and all the components load. If I come to the process page, our process loads, and see how it doesn't refresh when I switch sides. That's because React Router DOM will re-render our whole component and not refresh the page. So with this, we've covered how to route with React Router DOM. Remember, instead of using an anchor element, you use a link component, and then you say to instead of href. It's very simple. Before we end the video, I'd also like to show you how to put a custom error page at our sites. So if someone accidentally enters a wrong URL, they will be redirected to that error page. At our roots, I will create a new JSX called error page.jsx. I call ref_c here to create our component. This will be the layout of our component. I will add another p tag here. And to make this an actual error page functional with React Router DOM, React Router DOM has a hook called useRootError. So I'll import useRootError from React Router DOM. I'll call it at the top, and this will be stored in a constant variable called error. This will throw us back what type of error occurred when the user was redirected to the error page. So in an I tag here, I will display error.status text. This will display the status text, or I'll display error.message. If I come to about one, for example, which is a non-existent root, we get this instead of our current page. That's because I have to come to our main.jsx, and below the children, I'll add an error page, error element. This will be the error page. And if an error occurs while we are rooting, because we are nesting our children, which is a good behavior, then the error page will get thrown, just like it does there. That's it for error handling. And one last extra that I'd like to show you is that with React Router DOM in the children, if I duplicate, for example, our about, if I say about / and then colon ID, this will act as a slug. So whatever I enter, we will get redirected to a certain about page. This could be, for example, a certain tweet or a certain comment on YouTube. And to present this, instead of about our coffee shop, I say about XYZ coffee shop. If I enter about /1, for example, it will display about XYZ coffee shop or about to coffee shop. This is just a quick introduction that you can use slugs in React Router DOM. They are a little more complex for this video. I might have to include them in a separate one if you're interested, but that's basically it about routing. Now let's conclude what we did throughout this video. At first, we imported the create browser router and created our router, which defines our routes. Then we replaced the rendering of our app with the router provider and passed in our router. This means this router provider will now render our components accordingly to what we've set inside our router. We give a path and an element to the routes which we want to render. Each of them can have children, which means you can nest your components and make sure that some components are always present, the others are optionally. And there are also error elements, and if you mistype the URL, then the error element will appear. This will only work if you imported the useRootError, because then React Router DOM will recognize that this is an error page. As for the nesting, the outlet will represent the other components that needs to be wrapped inside the navbar and the footer in our example. So with this concluded, I hope our explanation was clear, the examples were clear. If something is not clear, comment it down below. And if you liked the video and you found value in it, please consider giving us a like, maybe even subscribe. And other than that, I hope to see you in the next one. Happy coding and God bless.